Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and today I'm bringing you my first impressions for Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era, which just released in early access on April 30th. It's the newest entry in the Heroes of Might and Magic series. If you don't know what the Heroes games are like, they're not super easy to explain because they blend strategy, RPG, and base building elements into something that can potentially sound like an abomination of a game, but somehow it works. If you haven't yet played any Heroes games, don't worry, you can see plenty of gameplay here, and I'll explain a bunch of stuff about how it all works, so hopefully by the end of this video you'll know if it's something you're keen on trying out. Now, the reason I wanted to cover Olden Era immediately as it came out in early access is because Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. I haven't talked about it on this channel until now because it's a bit too old and a bit too complicated for people who have never played Heroes, so I never knew how to introduce it in a way that would be enjoyable to watch and ideally also get you to try it out for yourself if you like strategic gameplay. However, Olden Era does a great job with its tutorials to teach new players how all of these different gameplay elements work, and of course it has quality of life features and various new ways to customize and upgrade your abilities, units, town economy, and defenses, and so on, which make for far more varied and interesting gameplay than the older titles. So this is the perfect moment for me to talk to you about Heroes because I can show you a game that is far more accessible, and maybe if you enjoy it, then you'll also be willing to try out Heroes 3 since that one's still the best. Anyway, before we get into it, I'll take a moment to say a special thank you to my members. You're all amazing and I appreciate you so much. If you want to help me out, subscribing and becoming a member are the best ways, but only if you want to and can afford it. I'm always grateful even if you just like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment. Starting with the gameplay, since this is the most important aspect, first here are all the different game modes that are available. There's the entire first act of the campaign, which takes you through a story focused on certain heroes and factions, though you will get to make choices throughout the story and change how certain things develop. There's a tutorial, of course, which is fairly well done, I think, especially for a new player to help them learn how all the different elements of the game work, though it can still be a bit light and not quite help the player soak in all the details. I recommend going through the campaign after the tutorial, since the campaign is very well designed to ramp up the difficulty and complexity slowly, especially if you play it on easy or normal. But then there are also challenges. These are special scenarios or games which are focused on a particular kind of mechanic or strategy. They're kind of meant to help you explore these different strategies so that you can learn how to use them in regular games. So that's neat, although I'm not really the kind of player who enjoys doing these. And then you have, of course, quick games where you choose a game mode, a map type, a faction, a hero, and then you play. And custom games where you can adjust a bunch more things, and you can also choose here to play one of the 8 scenarios that have been created by the devs, which actually have a story to them and are more interesting than just random maps. Of course, random maps are fun to play, but I've always liked scenarios more. Too bad I haven't been able to beat any of the ones I tried because the AI is just extremely powerful. Unsure if it's a bug or poor balancing, but hopefully that will get fixed soon because I'm very curious about the stories of these scenarios. The game modes you can choose from are Classic, Single Hero, Arena, and Scenarios. In Classic, you can control multiple heroes, and if one of them dies, the game continues. In Single Hero, you're only allowed to have one hero, and if they die, you lose the game. Arena is a quick game mode in which you draft a hero, their equipment and army, and then duel an opponent in turn-based combat. And the scenarios are, as I've said, more story-focused games that follow a particular character through a little narrative, not as deep as a campaign, but still interesting. As part of the map templates, there are also different victory conditions you can choose from. Classic is just defeating all the enemy heroes and capturing their towns. City Hold requires you to capture a specific neutral town and hold it for a certain amount of time. Capital Hold requires you to capture the opponent's starting town and hold it for a certain amount of time. And then there are the tournament and final battle victory conditions, which pit your hero against the opponent's hero in battles at certain points in the game. For tournament, there's multiple fights, best of 3, I believe. And for final battle, there's obviously just one big battle. I'm expecting they're going to add more interesting victory conditions in the future, but already there's a lot of variety here, so that's great. There's also multiplayer where you can play online with people, and there's also the option for hot seat where you can take turns at the same computer with your friends to play, which was a huge thing for the earlier Heroes games, and it was a very hotly requested feature after Olden Era's demo. The devs are also focusing on adding co-op and the ability to create teams of players and/or AI, so that will be likely implemented in a patch fairly soon, I imagine. Overall, there's a ton of content already, and I can see how you could sink hundreds of hours into this even without any additional content being added later. I've already played over 20 hours myself, and the game's only been out for 2 days when I'm recording this. Plus, there's a map editor, and you know that talented people are already working on making some cool maps and scenarios. The map editor is in a beta state right now, so I'm unsure how many features it has and what's planned to be added to it, but I'm absolutely keeping my eyes peeled for player-created maps because those were a ton of fun in Heroes 3. Honestly, I'm kind of tempted to try to remake some Heroes 3 scenarios in the Olden Era map editor myself, but I'll have to see how easy it is to use and whether I have the skill to recreate those myself. But if you like messing around with map editors, of course you have this option, and if you don't, you'll still benefit from the map editor because you'll have more maps to play if you download the user-created ones. It's a win-win situation. So yeah, tons of content, very fun to play, absolutely recommend it based on the gameplay itself. But what exactly is the gameplay of a Heroes game like, and specifically what's new or different about Olden Era? For new players, here's a quick gameplay overview. Heroes of Might and Magic gameplay basically boils down to this. RPG gameplay through your heroes who level up and learn skills, spells, and other abilities, and also equip items for various bonuses. Strategy gameplay through the turn-based exploration and battles, as well as various choices you make throughout the game, which skills you choose, how you upgrade your units and spells, and so on. And finally, a base building element through the towns that you control, where you will be constructing various buildings and upgrading them, and spending gold and resources on units, spells, and potentially even artifacts. You have one or more heroes depending on the game type, and these heroes command armies of units in turn-based combat against either groups of neutral creatures you encounter as you're exploring, or armies led by enemy heroes. As you do battle and explore the map with your heroes, they will eventually gain enough XP to level up. When they do, they'll gain some random attributes based on if they're a Might or Magic hero. Might is focused on basic combat, and Magic is better at casting spells and dealing more magical damage. You will also get to choose a skill for your hero out of 3 choices, and it can be either a new skill or upgrading an existing skill to a higher rank. When you upgrade skills at higher ranks, a new thing is that you get to choose one of 3 bonuses this new rank gives your hero, which further lets you customize your build. Very nice. Olden Era also adds another system on top of the regular progression. Each class can specialize into one of 2 elite classes, if the hero manages to unlock and upgrade the 5 prerequisite skills for that specialization. This is in theory really cool and adds more depth since you have to consider what you want to specialize in, or maybe if it's just better to have a different combination of skills that doesn't give you either elite class. The problem with the system is that in practice you're extremely unlikely to unlock the elite class in any of your games because you need to get really lucky to get offered the skills you need. You only have 8 total skills, and most heroes start with 2 unrelated skills or 1 advanced one, so you only have space in your skill list for 1, maybe 2 mistakes, but that's it. In all the games I played, I haven't even been able to unlock an elite class once, and I've played this obsessively since it came out. I've heard that quite a few other people have had the same issue, so it's not just me. There are 6 playable factions in the game right now: Temple, with righteous soldiers, clerics, griffins, and angels; Necropolis, with necromancers, skeletons, liches, ghosts; Dungeon, with fantasy D&D-like creatures like troglodytes, minotaurs, medusas, hydras, and dragons; Schism, an icy anti-magic faction that's kind of a subset of Dungeon that got corrupted or changed through some water ritual; Grove, a nature, druidic, and fae kind of faction; and finally Hive, which acts as the main antagonistic faction in the campaign, at least so far, and which contains various insect-like creatures that are augmented by demonic fire. Temple, Dungeon, and Necropolis are kind of coming back from the previous games, although a bit changed. The other 3 factions are new, although if you look at Grove, you can imagine that the Rampart and Conflicts factions from Heroes 3 might have originally been part of the Grove faction, but then split, just like Dungeon and Schism have done in Olden Era. Since this is a prequel, I like to imagine that some of these factions and units are the precursors to what we see in the other games. I think so far the factions are very different from each other, and I certainly already have preferences, but I fully expected to love Dungeon the most since that's my favorite faction in Heroes 3, and that's exactly what happened. Curiously, I really like Rampart, but really hate Conflicts, and so Grove is somewhere in the middle between those two, so it's just kind of meh for me. Schism is interesting, but personally I haven't quite understood how to play it yet. I hope I'll get to learn through the campaign later on, because otherwise I think I'll just avoid it because it's too weird for me. Temple and Necropolis are super solid and I enjoy them, but, they're kind of basic and fairly similar to what I knew from Heroes 3, so nothing wowed me about them. Now, the towns and base building aspects are where Olden Era has made quite a few additions, and I'm enjoying these extra elements a lot. First and foremost, you can now choose one of 2 upgrades for your units in town, and not only that, but you can also swap between them for free while in town, which is super nice because each upgraded version of the unit has slightly different stats and different abilities, so they can be useful in different situations. Other than being able to choose different upgrades for your units, you can also customize certain structures in your town when you upgrade them. Your fortifications can get different bonuses, you can get some extra units defending your town during a siege, or extra obstacles or traps for your opponent's army to wade through, or upgrade your towers to deal extra damage or attack automatically when enemies are within a certain range. Your main hall type of building, which generally produces gold, now also produces 2 more resources called law points and astrology points. You can choose to focus more towards one of these additional resources instead of gold if you'd like, and can then use them to unlock extra things. Law points are used to enact laws. Think of this kind of like a tech tree from a strategy game like Civilization. You can get bonuses to unit production, gold, precious resources, but also bonuses for your heroes and their units in combat, or debuffs for enemy units. I've been trying out various laws, and honestly I've just scratched the surface with what's possible to do with this if you find the right combination between your hero's skills, laws, unit upgrades, and spells. And speaking of spells, astrology points allow you to learn some powerful neutral spells which you can use on the world map. Stuff like Shadow Flight, which allows you to fly past obstacles instead of going around them, or Dimension Door, which teleports you to a location, Second Wind, which restores a bunch of movement points to your hero, Town Portal, which teleports you back to town, and so on. Things like Fly and Dimension Door are really cool spells that skilled Heroes 3 players use in challenge runs for Heroes 3, so I love to see that they've returned in Olden Era, although I have most certainly forgotten entirely that they existed this entire time after the tutorial. Oops. Anyway, now that I've remembered their existence, I'm going to have a much easier time moving around the map. But we'll talk about why exactly I forgot or didn't really notice these spells in the visuals section. In any case, overall the gameplay feels very fun, and it's exactly what I want from a Heroes game as a Heroes 3 fan. Is it going to be everyone's cup of tea? No, of course not. But then again, I feel like Heroes in general is quite a niche strategy game due to the fact that it has this weird blend of elements. But in all honesty, other than the fact that there's still some balancing issues and some minor bugs here and there, the gameplay elements of Olden Era feel quite polished and not like they're part of a game that only just started early access. So I'm extremely happy with what we got so far and am very much looking forward to seeing how they're going to improve it in the future. Moving on to the story and writing. The story is set in the original Heroes universe on the planet of Enroth, like in the first Heroes games, specifically on the continent Jadam. It's set before the events of the first game and centers around the danger of the Hive, a swarm of insectoids corrupted by a demon who wants to subjugate the entire world. The various factions have to work together to face the ever-burning fires and swarms of the Hive, and that's the super basic premise that the campaign story is about. Of course, there's far more to it than that, but I think it's best for you to discover the story for yourself instead of me explaining it all. But I do have to say that this is far more a strategy game than an RPG. So if you're expecting the kind of narrative that a game like Kingdom Come Deliverance has, this is not and has never been the focus of Heroes. The gameplay comes first always, and story and lore are a nice little bonus. However, that being said, Olden Era actually has the best story that I've personally seen in the series. Albeit, I only played Heroes 3, a little bit of 4, then tried out 5 and didn't like it. But back in 3 and 4 at least, the story played out in a few cutscenes at the start or end of a campaign mission, plus you got a ton of text boxes that were quite boring to read for the most part. In contrast, in Olden Era, you're still getting nice cutscenes, love the painting, art style they went with, but then you're also getting conversations between characters, complete with their portraits and names, which makes for a far nicer reading experience. Plus, some of the conversations, the ones between missions, are actually voice acted. I was very surprised. Definitely didn't expect any voice acting outside of cutscenes, and it's good quality voice acting too. The quality of the writing is also super solid. I've got absolutely no complaints, and I'm someone who genuinely cares about writing, so if I say it's solid, I mean it. So far, in terms of the main campaign, we've got the first act, which is pretty long if you take your time to explore everything and try to do most side quests or tasks. The thing I like most about it is that you can actually make choices which have different consequences. You can choose 2 versions of a mission, one where you side with the temple, one where you side with the grove, and that will affect your reputation or standing with those factions accordingly. You can also make choices within the missions themselves, which can further affect how the story goes. Did you accept the necromancer's offer to resurrect a character for information, or did you decide to get the information from somewhere else so that you don't have to be indebted to the necromancers? It's just been very cool to go through the story, especially because I didn't actually think I'd care all that much about the campaign. I generally just play scenarios and random maps and heroes. So I'm super pleased with the story, and I can't wait to see the other acts of the campaign. I actually feel invested in the fate of my heroes and the factions, and also very interested in the lore of what's going on with all of them and this new demon-led Hive faction. Outside of the campaign, there's also some scenarios that have a story to them, and they seem really cool, but unfortunately so far they've been extremely difficult even on normal, and I haven't been able to progress through them. I'm unsure if they're meant to be this challenging, or maybe the difficulty of the enemy AI is bugged. We'll have to see if the devs release a fix for it soon, because I've heard other people are also struggling with the enemy AI outside of the campaign. Moving on to the visuals, this is the part where I have quite a few complaints. I think the art style overall is fine. They've definitely improved on it since their earlier demo because the game did look a bit too cartoonish and mobile game-like, which I really didn't like, but it looks good now. All the units are distinct from each other and look cool, although I will say some look a bit generic still. My main issue with the visuals is related to the readability of the game. Exploration is made quite difficult because you can't easily tell what's a point of interest you can interact with and what's just a bit of decoration. The devs have added a bunch of readability settings with a glow color for interactable objects, heroes, and enemies, outlines for everything, and even a few different color profiles to choose from. But even so, it's still a bit frustrating to explore the map, and it can feel like a strain on your eyes. The best option that I've found is to set the color profile to contrast and desaturate the map background to something like 0.5. That way, interactable objects pop out the best, but you will still likely struggle to see all the different resources scattered on the ground. I've certainly missed a lot of them and only found some later when coming back through the area and holding the highlight button. You may also miss certain explorable areas because it doesn't look like your hero is going to be able to enter them if they have a super narrow path that's partially obstructed from view by something. I've gotten used to hovering over areas now and trying to click once on them to see if I can move towards them through some path I can't see, or if I truly would have to find another roundabout path to get there, or perhaps use fly or dimension door spells. And if only the explorable map was the only problem. Oh no, the UI is quite honestly a disaster. First off, I don't know why they went with this very dark and desaturated blue, because it makes everything look faded and unimportant, and you need to be able to read and have things pop out in your vision if they're important. But as I said earlier in the gameplay section, I completely forgot about the existence of those neutral spells that you can buy with astrology points, and I kept wondering why astrology points were needed at all since I didn't seem to use them up when unlocking regular spells. It was only by accident when I was looking at all the different resources for this video that I clicked on the button that took me to the special screen with the neutral spells. If clicking on the law points takes you directly to the place where you use them, then clicking on the astrology points button should take you directly to the screen with the neutral spells instead of just your regular mage guild. But even so, things should be highlighted better. I can barely see the movement points and mana points of my heroes when I look at the portraits on the right because they're just so damn small. Inside the towns, it's hard to read all the descriptions of the buildings and building upgrades because they're all squished together into one screen, which makes everything so small, and the text is too tiny and thin. Same with the unit upgrades. Like, I have actually felt like my eyes are straining and needed to take a break every once in a while, despite the fact that I would have loved to keep playing just because my eyes were tired from how hard it is to read and notice everything. I think the base of what they have here is okay, but it needs quite a bit of work. The color scheme needs to change. This desaturated dark blue and black and gold is not cutting it and just feels kind of yucky, to be honest. In Heroes 3, the basic elements are a nice textured brown, which reminds me of leather, with gold accents, and there's a trim which matches your player color, which is always a nice touch. In Olden Era, there's nothing that matches your player color other than a few flags on your hero, town, and tag locations on the map, which is a shame. I would have loved to see the whole UI change and have at least a bit of red if your player color is red, or purple if it's purple, and so on. I'm sure the devs should be able to add these kinds of things to the game since they were clearly able to add other bits of color customization and visual changes for readability, so I'm not too worried it'll stay like this. But I did want to showcase all of these visual issues because this might be very important to know ahead of time for people who maybe have visual impairments or other issues that will cause their eyes to get tired or even hurt from the strain of playing this game in its current state. I hope it's going to get better soon, but yeah, maybe wait for that to happen before you buy it if it's going to be a problem for you. It's really a shame that the visuals are this bad right now because, as I said, I've been enjoying Olden Era a lot and playing it as much as I can, though not as much as I want to due to the eye strain. I really think they would have had a much easier time had they just made the game 2D instead of 3D, or at least if they chose a slightly different visual style that's more stylized and makes everything pop more. I don't know. Either way, this is the one big weakness the game currently has, and it's up to you whether the other elements make up for it enough for you to still find it enjoyable. Moving on to audio and performance, I've combined these two together because there's not enough to say about each separately to make different sections. The audio design is very nice overall, good music, sound effects, and even the voice acting is great for the cutscenes and conversations between missions, though I'd honestly love a fully voice-acted campaign personally. The music is actually composed by Paul Anthony Romero, who created the much-beloved soundtrack for Heroes 3, and you can absolutely tell it's his work. Though I will say that Olden Era's music feels a bit too muted for my taste. It doesn't feel as grand and bombastic as the music of Heroes 3 felt, so it's a bit forgettable. I don't know if maybe there's going to be more tracks added later, but the combat music especially has felt a bit lackluster. It's not bad, it's just not as amazing as Romero's work in Heroes 3, that's all. In general, I feel like the common theme of my complaints about Olden Era is that things are a bit too muted, too bland, too safe in a way that actually makes them too generic to be enjoyable, especially to the target audience who are big fans of the original Heroes games that are incredibly vibrant and colorful and bold. The performance has overall been fine in terms of stability, no crashes, no freezing, no major bugs that stop me from progressing, though I did encounter various other bugs, one of which was actually kind of funny. During one mission in the campaign, my heroes had unlimited movement points for some reason, so I ended up completing that mission in one single day because I just explored the entire map with both my heroes without ever needing to pass the time. It was an interesting thing for sure, and at first I thought it was intentional, but then realized that there were a lot of creature dwellings that I was probably meant to take advantage of every week to recruit new units, and instead I just kind of brute forced my way through by trading my most powerful units between my heroes to do everything in a single day. It was still very much a fun mission, but I don't think that was how the devs intended it to be played. I've already mentioned that the difficulty of the AI outside of the campaign, so in scenarios and random maps, seems to be busted, and you just get absolutely destroyed by it, so I'm assuming that's also probably a bug. I can't say I noticed anything else egregious, but I tend to play games in a fairly expected way, so I don't tend to encounter a lot of bugs due to this. In conclusion, Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era feels like the kind of Heroes game I've been waiting for since Heroes 3, because this indeed feels the most like Heroes 3 out of all the games that came after it. It's clearly being made by people who love the series and likely are big fans of Heroes 3 themselves, and I greatly appreciate that because otherwise I wouldn't even be making this video, and I have probably never found the right moment to start talking about one of my favorite games of all time otherwise. Is this game still rough around the edges? Sure, especially when it comes to the visuals and especially the UI, as well as some issues with balancing, the difficulty and power of the enemy AI. But I think that these things are absolutely fixable and should be solved fairly soon as well, and otherwise the game is just so damn fun to play that I keep wanting to play more. I played a bunch more games of it even when I was supposed to be working on my video. That's how much I'm enjoying it. So, coming from a huge fan of Heroes 3 who has been playing it every single year since I was a little kid, thank you to the devs for clearly putting in so much love and care towards making Olden Era. I've been so excited to try out all the factions and play through the campaign and play random maps and just explore everything in the game, and I haven't felt this excited about a game in an existing series I love in a very long time. If you enjoyed the kind of gameplay that Olden Era has to offer and aren't too bothered by the visual issues and obviously some early access boo-boos, I do recommend picking it up on Steam now because in the first week after releasing, it's on a 25% discount, bringing it down to €30 from the original price of $40. I'll have the Steam page linked in the description. Would I have paid the full price of €40 for this in early access? Yes, I still think it's absolutely worth it since it has so much content already, but it's also because I'm a fan of the series and I trust the publisher Hooded Horse to support the developers at Unfrozen to be able to complete the game and bring it to a great state when it reaches 1.0. So because of that, I wouldn't have minded paying the full price, though of course it being at a solid discount helped a lot with me buying it immediately when it released, like I was actively refreshing the Steam page once it said it was going to release in less than an hour. In any case, these have been my fairly in-depth first impressions of Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era. I hope this has been useful to you and helped you figure out whether this game is for you, and whether you'd enjoy it in its current state or if you should wait for it to get updated some more. I will probably make some updated impressions when the game gets some major patches, and of course a proper review when it reaches 1.0, but that's about a year from now, so we'll see how things go. If you've already tried the game for yourself, I'm curious to know what your experience has been like. Have you had the same issues with readability as me? Did you encounter other bugs? And of course, what's your favorite faction? If you enjoyed this, stick around for future videos I plan to make about games I care about, like more updates about Olden Era, reviews or highlights of other games, lore and discussion videos, guides, and occasionally challenge runs. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, or maybe become a channel member. I have a small channel, genuinely anything helps, and just know that I only make videos about what I genuinely care about and what I actually want to make, not what's popular or what gets clicks or stuff like that. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.